On the 23rd of December 1912, the Viceroy of India and his wife stepped off a train onto the platform of Delhi railway station. A band struck up the national anthem, and in the distance the guns of the Red Fort opened up in salute. The station was decorated with banners and British flags and packed with people. The Viceroy, Lord Charles Hardinge, and his wife, Lady Winifred, were met by dozens of dignitaries and officials. The Lieutenant Governor of Punjab and various military officers were joined by the nobility of the princely states, all here to welcome the representative of the Emperor of India into the old and now new capital. The previous year, the King Emperor himself, George V, had held a Durbar in Delhi, the first and last time a British monarch would do so. At this spectacular event, he had announced the transfer of the capital of India from Calcutta to Delhi. His Viceroy was here to make that official, with a state entry into the old Mughal metropolis, to mark that transfer of power. In a grand procession down the Chandi Chowk, the Viceroy and Vicereine would lead a ceremony in the Red Fort. Hardinge inspected his honour guard as the first ranks of the parade set off from outside the station. The vice-regal couple then climbed up onto the back of a richly decorated elephant and into a silver howdah. They were joined by the Viceroy's personal servant, as well as a Jamadar named Mahabir, who had requested to hold the couple's parasol at this grand event. As their elephant began to move, Hardinge later recalled that he said to his wife, "I feel quite miserable. I'm sure something dreadful is going to happen." She replied, "It's only that you're tired, and you always dislike ceremonial." Lady Winifred spoke like millions of wives have to millions of husbands. But if Hardinge did have a feeling something was going to happen, he was shockingly accurate. Down the packed Chandi Chowk, on the roof of the Punjab National Bank, was a spot to view the procession reserved for ladies. In a crowd of saris and veils was a figure who wasn't supposed to be there. They had introduced themselves as Lakshmi Bai. On another day, someone might have questioned their appearance or their voice, but not today. The procession moved down the street, a boulevard 75 feet wide and almost a mile long. The road itself was divided into two lanes by a row of trees. At the front of the procession were the Chief Commissioner of Delhi and the Superintendent of Police, accompanied by several squadrons of cavalry and a battery of horse-drawn artillery. They were followed by the Viceroy's honour guard and then a corps of cadets. Then came the elephants. The vice-regal elephant was the most grand, but others were richly adorned with silks and howdahs, carrying British officials and Indian princes. The path of the procession was lined with police officers, and plain-clothes detectives were stalking the massive crowds who had gathered to watch. Next to Hardinge's elephant strode the Deputy Superintendent of Delhi CID, dressed in plain clothes, with a revolver holstered under his coat. The procession was about halfway down the Chandi Chowk when it passed the Punjab National Bank. A metallic thud sounded out right behind the Viceroy, and then there was a deafening explosion. Lady Hardinge was thrown out of her seat, down into the well of the howdah. Lord Hardinge was himself struck by several pieces of shrapnel, and his pith helmet spun off his head with enough force to fall down into the street. The Viceroy's assistant was also injured, his clothes shredded by the explosion and suffering dozens of minor cuts. But the worst fate befell Mahabir. He had been standing right behind the Viceroy, and the bomb, because it was a bomb, had landed right by his feet. He was instantly killed. The shrapnel from the explosion also injured at least 20 bystanders and killed a 16-year-old boy. In the immediate aftermath, the Hardinges were understandably dazed and confused. Both they and their assistant had been deafened by the blast. The elephant and its driver appeared unharmed. Hardinge's initial order was that the procession should continue. Nothing could deflect the British government and the government of India from their declared intention, but Lady Winifred tugged at him, yelling through deafened hearing, "There is a dead man behind us." Hardinge then saw the destroyed body of Mahabir and stood to call a halt to the procession. But as he did so, he stumbled and keeled over, revealing the true extent of his injuries. His back was torn open from shrapnel. On the ground, it was chaos. police either formed a protective cordon around the viceregal elephant or rushed into the crowd, searching for any sign of who had thrown the bomb. The onlookers were, obviously, panicking, and many of them were injured. One of them, the boy, was lying very still. The elephant was, understandably, terrified by all the commotion. A bomb had just gone off on its back, and now there were people yelling and running around it, so it didn't kneel, and the police had to build a staircase of wooden crates to reach the howdah and get the wounded Viceroy down. He was gently lowered onto a makeshift stretcher and rushed by motorcar to the Viceregal Lodge. He would survive the attack, but it took months for him to recover. Police inspected the scene, and it became very clear that Hardinge had escaped with his life by the narrowest of margins. He had been saved by three things: his pith helmet, dented by screws, the silver howdah, which was mangled from taking most of the force and shrapnel of the explosion, and Mahibir, whose body had shielded the viceregal couple from the rest. It was a mystery at the time who had thrown the bomb, but now we know it was the work of two men, Basant Kumar Biswas and Rash Bihari Bose. Bose had volunteered to assassinate the Viceroy, telling another revolutionary that it was, quote, "better to shoot an elephant than to get your hands dirty swatting flies." Winds of Change, Season 1, Episode 6. Reform or Revolution?